Okay. Okay, so question about importance of feminine energy at this time and what that means for future of planet and time of new era you're moving into. Okay, this is a good question, interesting question, because you see so many people are talking about the rise, as they call it, of the feminine, the rise of the feminine, they're saying, the rise of the feminine. Okay, there is a natural energy that exists in things that is complementary, that is the the two sides of the same coin. You don't have one without the other. It's impossible. So anytime that you have what has been called masculine energy, you also then have what is called feminine energy. Now that is not anything to do with the sexuality of the energy. There's nothing to do with the sex of the energy. It's to do with the idea, the concepts has been around for a long time now, of different ideas. So actually the description of feminine or masculine is really a shorthand. It's an abbreviated way of saying all of the essences that are incorporated within a certain type of energy. And when we say this is a masculine energy, it saves us having to go into the whole depth of this is a forceful energy, this energy, that, and a whole list of things that you could then go into of describing what people have used to describe a particular type of energy. Now there exists a we see we understand the need for shortcut, we do, and there's no problem in that. But you see, when it becomes mixed up in ideas of masculine or mixed up in ideas of feminine, you see, the people can run away with it, and people can get caught up in the notion of women and men rather than the masculine and feminine. Now, this was never meant to be. So we would not say any longer, for a reason now, masculine, feminine, because you see, there is a rise in the concept of feminine. That means that women are taking it as a signal that it is the rise of the woman. Now, it's actually the rise of the feminine in the original depiction of what that word meant, which was the concepts of in ancient times of the yin and the yang, etc. And it goes back even further. It goes back even further from the dawn. You see, because if you think of anything that exists in life, you cannot have one without the opposite. It's the opposite which makes the dominant one exist, if you put it that way. So when you have a coin, in many ways, it's only if you have heads facing you, it's only the tails on the other side that makes it heads. It's a concept to get your head around, but you see, it's only the opposing force that enables the original dominant force to exist. And this, if you like, it's the shadow that allows the light, or it's the light that causes the shadow. We prefer that. They say that. The light that causes the shadow. You see, without one, there is no other. So it's the echo. It's the echo that allows the prevailing, in this case, energy to exist, or the prevailing opinion, the prevailing, it doesn't matter what it is. In any life, you have to have duality. So therefore, in the duality of energy, you have the yin and the yang, or as I say, go back even further. But what you have is the idea of open and soft, forceful and direct, and all these different energy ideas that have been caused to be wrapped up in the idea of masculine and feminine, but then became the idea of male and female and man and woman. Now, to a degree, there is an element here that could be construed as understandable for the masculine and feminine. You see, in the past, you have had a masculine way of doing things, hunter-gatherer, spear throwing, all these preconceived ideas of what man and women were in the original times. It's actually not so true. male and female energies have existed in all beings at all times, because you can't have one without the other. So if a female is, and talking here of a woman, if you are a woman, you only exist as a woman because you have the balance of the female and the male energy within you. You have to. You can't be one without the other. So therefore, you go back to the dawn of times, it was ever that way. You can't ever be anything different. Sure, you may have had stereotype roles of what was and what wasn't, but can we say even back then, roles were more blurred than perhaps people would like to think. Let's put it that way. So if you have this concept of female masculine energy, but then you try to put it into male female body, you can get yourself in a whole heap of trouble. And you see, when you have the history that the world was pushed into in the 18th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, we're changing now, centuries. You see, you had more and more and more dominant society where the world was built around ideas of functionality, ideas of practicality, ideas of stability, all these ideas which were heavy, strong in terms of what was how things had to be in order to make them work. And they were considered to be a more masculine energy. And this is true. But they were never man, they were masculine energy. But you see, perhaps it was fair to say that men were led down the path of believing that this was the natural course for them. And perhaps there is a degree which says that many men do find those natural tendencies to be a little bit more easier to tap into. But may we say that much of this is only hereditary and preconceived ideals that you see it's very difficult for people, male and female, men and women, to step out of. You see, you had a whole wave of energy changing the role of what was supposedly meant to be woman, you see. And this was happening throughout the 19th centuries into the 20th centuries and beyond. And this concept that women were not what women were told they would be. But you see, now we're having the change of men are not what men have told they were to be. So you see, you've had a society being brought up through different epochs and eras of expansion, really, of society that has said that, okay, this is the way men are to be. Okay, this is the way women are to be. Now, it never was thus. It could never be thus because nobody fits into that fully and can be content being who they are. But people did it because they were told by society this is what was. Well, you see, it's the society that shaped the energy. It's not the energy that shaped the society, unfortunately. We're changing. We're changing. So what you have is not only the rise of women trying to become more balanced in their energy, male, female, which is the rise of the female movement, the rise of the feminist movement, the rise of women's rights, the rise of equality, and all these concepts that were around now for a long time, actually. And they have chipped away. We're not going to get into the discussion of whether they're there, they're not, but they have chipped away at the stereotype of what society said a female energy is in a woman. And they have, to a degree, succeeded in shaping some of those transformations. And later to the game, you have men saying, well, we're not totally comfortable being thought of and brought up as this totally masculine energy that has been dictated by society as what a man should be. So we're now seeing the rise and the change of ideas of what it is to be man. And these men are saying, well, I'm not comfortable being the breadwinner, and I'm not comfortable being the gatherer hunter, and I'm not comfortable being this, and this. And it's the balance. It's just it's the re-seeking of balance that should always be in all people. that is you are both, and that you are only ever going to exist if you can be both, because that's the duality of existence. So when you see the changes that are coming now, and we'll get into new era, but the changes that the society, it's society, it's not the natural instinct of inclination that's so much changing, although there is an element we get into, but if society is evolving and understanding that you can only pigeonhole people for so long before their true nature will come back. You can't keep telling people fit into a square box, fit into a square box, and eventually they come back and say, but I'm not square. I'm not square and it doesn't fit and I can't stay there any longer. So society can achieve a great deal, but society has also done a great deal to try to protect itself by institutionalizing ideas. Let's put it that way. Society has tried to protect itself by institutionalizing ideas that served itself but didn't serve the society full of actual people that it was supposed to be serving. And what it said was, okay, women are this and men are that. Good. Okay, now we can continue. If we have this as our basic structure, then we can continue. But it didn't fit then, it doesn't fit now. It can never fit. As I've said, you are dual, and that's the whole purpose of your nature. So what you have is the natural rebalancing effect that will always occur. Energy will always find itself back into harmony whenever it's allowed to, and society has got to a point where energy is finding that it is allowed to rebalance itself. And in so doing, what you are finding is that actually it's just a humanitarian balancing of energy, because it's saying, you are both, be both at any given time. At certain times you will be one more than the other, that's normal. At certain times you will be this, at certain times you will be that. That's the nature of humanity, not male or female. And that it may serve you to be more of this at some times and more of this energy at other times, and that you are finding your way into allowing that energy that is duality of existence, male, female, masculine, female, nothing to do with man, woman, it's all within you, to allow itself to be when it needs to be, what it needs to be, regardless of societal restraints and constraints. So then we come to what is being called the rise of the feminine. Okay, so here's the thing. Just as all things have duality, so does the planet. Let's start there. Okay, so the planet is going through a rebalancing of itself, because this is what happens all the time. You are shifting and changing. You are one more than the other. You're never equal at all times. That's not balance. You see, balance doesn't have to be that you're dead in the middle. It's actually quite impossible to be that. How do you be masculine and female energy balanced? Balance is that you can be whatever you need to be at the given time that you're in. So the planet has been through a period of masculine energy. That's fact. It's entering a phase of feminine energy. Why? It's to do with the transition of the planet through its orbit, and all these concepts that people are bringing into the framework now for where we're at in this time. It's all figures. It does all figure. It's also partly to do with the way that the vibrations are shifting and changing. It requires a change in the vibration also of the energy of the planet to be coexisting with the vibrations of its inhabitants on the planet, and to coexist with its place in time, in space at this time. So all these changes required that it's a natural flow for the Earth's energy to also be entering a more feminine energy time. So what does this mean? Okay, well, it means that the Earth itself will start to flourish in the way that people want it to, because you're getting in touch with soft, you're getting in touch with open, you're getting in touch with light, you're getting in touch with expansion in a flowful sense, not in a rigid build sense. So all of these concepts mean that the planet will thrive because actually they are more complementary vibrations for the re-energizing of an organic matter, the planet, than perhaps was the masculine energy, although we will say that that's a part of it too. You can't have one without the other, so it's not wrong to have that. It's just at this time what the earth needs, what is required, it will move naturally into a more feminine energy dominant period. Okay, so yes, now what you will see is that all the traits of the feminine, let's put it that, please, it's very specific, the feminine energy will come to the surface. This is the rise of the feminine. It's not the rise of woman. And this is the problem. Some well-meaning, perhaps, people are trying to make this into a man-woman situation. It can never be. Your enemy or your opposition cannot be male-female in terms of man-woman. I should use right words, man-woman. Because they are your complement, they are your echo, they are not your construct. Now it's society that has been the construct, not the man. So let's get into a new era, let's get into a new space where we see now it's right and it's natural and it's going to happen that we have a phase where we have the rise of the feminine energy. Anyone, male or female, who can tap into, touch into, allow to expand from a female, feminine energy point of view will rise to the top. It's not man, woman. It's the person that's able to recognize the strengths that are inherent now within a female, feminine energy that will allow this side of them to flourish, allow this side of them to tap into what is required and therefore come to the top. So what does this mean? Well, yes, you will see therefore that if you are naturally more inclined as a woman to be more in touch with the feminine, you will rise, as it's called. If you are a man who struggles to allow yourself to be the feminine that is within you, then you will struggle in the coming phase. But that doesn't mean that you can't change, and it doesn't mean that things can't shift, and it's actually more becoming for the planet and more becoming for the people on the planet, for you people on the planet at this time, if everyone starts to harmonize more and more into their feminine, because this will allow for the rise in the vibration that should exist. Now, this isn't going to go on forever. And it doesn't mean that just because there is a rise in feminine energy, that there is only feminine energy. It can't be. It can't be. There always has to be duality. So if you are the feminine energy dominant participant in any given venture at this time, you should actually be welcoming the support of masculine energy, because it will counterbalance and support and allow you to rise even further. The masculine dominant energy that sits so much right now in many authority-driven organizations are going to struggle, because they are not ones who are going to find it easy to tap in and tune into their feminine energy. And they are not going to find it easy to let go of their masculine energy dominant ways. And so they will struggle over the coming period of time as they perhaps fight to hold on to that which cannot be held on to from a masculine energy point of view. So what we will find is that you may well find women rising to the top. But don't make this about men and women. Make this about the rise of the feminine energy. if you have it within you, and you all do because you are all duality at all the time, your ability to shine, if you want to call it this way, to rise to the top, to support the planet, to support the people, to be effective, to be part of the whole transitional time, comes from your ability to tap and tune into the feminine energy, and that will enhance the whole of everything for all people. So men and women listening to the message, we say, be willing to soften, be willing to lighten up, be willing to loosen up, be willing to flow, be willing to see change and say it's a positive thing, rather than perhaps the shutdown, close down, rigid rules, box square, masculine energy ways that have perhaps in the past said, okay, this is change that we don't want, therefore we will rule it out. You're not going to rule it out anymore. So let's approach change from a place of a feminine energy, not a woman, but a feminine energy that embraces concepts, that embraces opposition, that embraces, you see, this is the feminine energy. It's expansive in a flowful sense, in a soft sense, in an inclusive sense. And that's what's needed right now. And you have it all, men and women, you have it all within you to be this now, because this is what is being asked. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to utilize some masculine energy along the way, because there's give and take, there's duality, there's need for both. But your overwhelming place of perhaps progress right now is going to be through the feminine energy for sure. And so what we would like to see, what would be great to see, is all people everywhere just embracing the concept of feminine energy and saying that where required, where necessary, inclusion, expansion, flow, soft, embracive, light, all these feminine energy ideals will be the norm. And we perhaps will let go of some of the dominant, rigid, forceful, closed off, shut down, less expansive through flow ideas that aren't going to serve mankind at this time. They just aren't, in a progressive sense, going to serve you. Use them when you need them to achieve, to do what needs to be done in the short term, but in a progressive sense for the planet as a whole, that's not where you need to be. So the more that you can operate from that feminine energy sense, the rise of the feminine will support you. But that isn't male and man and woman. Get the word right. There's not man and woman. That's all humanity and all things. Everything in this existence has duality, and it is the feminine energy that is rising. It is not the woman. You may see women coming to the fore in many different places, in your organizations and your constructs, but don't mistake it for what it is. You see, it should not be that there is a man and woman divide. We hate this. This is not what you're here for. Let's embrace, this is the feminine energy. The feminine energy is embracing. The feminine energy is embracing and doesn't need to exclude and discount and shut down. It's the opposite. If you're in that zone, you're in the masculine energy. You're not supporting the transition at this time. So if you're a woman, but you're trying to rise to the top of whatever field you're in through masculine energy, well, you're not going to get supported at this time, because you can't. Because what's required at this time is the feminine energy. So you may bulldoze your way through to a degree, but you're not going to find the support from the people and the planet and your life and the energy of all things that will exist naturally for you if you can just begin to embrace, to tap into feminine energy, to be that which is what is required for this time of transition. So the new era that we're moving into, you see, can't be about men and women. By its very nature, it can't be divisive. It can't say, right, well, women will come to the top and men will then become the role of the subservient, which was what was women perhaps perceived, and perhaps quite rightly so, in the past. It can't happen that there's a new era if that's still how humanity is operating, and it won't be. So the rise of the feminine is the key quality we would like to push, is the idea of embrace. Embrace all. In that embracing, what you have is opportunity for expansion, opportunity for growth, opportunity for transcendence, all from a light, loose, flowful space and energy. So this is where we will get to assist the transformation of the planet and assist the direction where we're going. We're not going to move forward into the new era through a masculine bulldoze approach. You can't work your way to a new era, which by its very nature is harmonious and embracing by being abrasive and perhaps a little shut down and closed off and heavy bulldozer, let's call it that way. So people are trying to do this in some fields. You see, they have great intentions. And they sort of have an idea that we're heading for some good changes, and they just want to get there, God damn it. And they're pushing. Well, pushing isn't feminine energy. You're still in the masculine energy, so you're not assisting the transformation and the building to the new era by going at this like a masculine energy. Let's rise the feminine energy up and say, okay, so now we can go through flow, through embracing. Okay, we can embrace and we can get there. We can do that. Yes, you can. And it's really the only way to hurry up and get there. So the new era is amongst you already. And the new era, in terms of how it relates to the feminine energy, is exactly that, embrace. When you see things that seem to you to be out of step with that which is, in your opinion, new era, or your opinion, the way to the new era, embrace them. Find a way to reach out and embrace, because that's the feminine energy that is needed now. The cut off, shut down, move out, no. There will be disintegration. There will be crumbling away of old authoritative ways that are masculine dominant, if you wish to put it in those terms, and that cannot change. Old era energy, we will call it. They will naturally fall by the wayside, but where there is opportunity to embrace, you see, you will find that there is far more energy towards transformation and towards progression by being able to embrace, all that is, that rather than to exclude or to shut down. And don't be scared of the other. Don't be scared of what is the other. You don't have to be scared. That's not embracing feminine energy. That's not the rise of the feminine, you see. The rise of the feminine knows. The rise of the feminine energy exists because it knows that flow and embrace and support and this whole different feeling of energy is the way forward. It doesn't have to shut down. It doesn't have to disclude. It doesn't have to discount. And it doesn't have to try to put down in any way. It's inclusive. It's an inclusive energy. It's as I say it again, embrace, embrace, embrace. So in terms of how this all works for mankind, it can actually be a true expansive era for all people, because as the individual seeks to harmonize all that they are and allows the rise of the feminine to come from them, you will find softness and you will find lightness when necessary, and you will still find the masculine. We're not going to say that we won't, because you shouldn't want to. As we've said, there are times in you want that masculine energy to balance the feminine energy, but the feminine energy will be dominant for sure. And in the individual, as that harmonizes, you will see greater results on the external, in the outer world, as that becomes the dominant energy force in the external world also. And the rise of the feminine then becomes this joyful time in a way, although masculine dominance can be also joyful. It's not a requirement that masculine energy is not joyful. But the rise of the feminine in a soft, joyful way that is embracing all of mankind, isn't that what the new era, the transition to, is about? Doesn't that make sense now? Why we have so much going on about the change in energy, the change in the rise of the feminine? Because it's an embracive energy. And isn't that what we're talking about when we're talking about transitioning to a new era? Aren't we talking about inclusion? Aren't we talking about equality for all living things, all mankind? Aren't we talking about different concepts, different ideologies? Aren't we talking about freedom? And aren't we talking about loosen? Aren't we talking about flow? And aren't we talking about whole different approach to life, to how life can work in a different way than how it's been told it has to be in order to work in the male dominant eras that you've come through? Isn't that what we're talking about a new era? Isn't that what we're talking about? So doesn't it make complete sense that that would be the fundamental energy at this time as we transition into a new era? We think so. With love.